Hi, for this video we're going to look at another situation involving distance, rate, and time. So for this one, Paul left the movie theater driving south 2 hours before Mary. Mary drove in the opposite direction going 10 miles per hour faster than Paul for 4 hours, after which time they were 340 miles apart. What was Paul's speed? So this one is a little more complex. This is a more complex of the problems that I've done. So we're starting from the movie theater. And it tells us that Paul is going south, and he's going to be traveling for longer. So this is Paul. And then it tells us that Mary is going to be going in the opposite direction. So Mary's going to be going this way. And it tells us that they are going to be 340 miles apart. So what we have here is we have Mary's distance plus Paul's distance. So we can say that what we're going to do is Mary plus Paul, their distance traveled is going to equal a total of 340. So if you recall with this, we know that distance equals rate times time. So what we need to do is find this for both Mary and Paul. So we need to find the distance for Mary, the distance for Paul, and that will help us out. So I'm going to set up a spreadsheet just because it's easier to keep track. Because there is so much information in these problems, I really advise just kind of setting up a little table to help you keep track of everything. So what we have is we have Mary, we have Paul, and we need to know information about their rate of travel, or also known as the speed. We need to know the time, and we need to know the distance, which is equal to the rate times the time. So rate is always going to be r, and the time is always going to be t. So with this, let's go through and pull out some information. It tells us that Paul left the movie theater driving south 2 hours before Mary. So that tells us that Paul traveled for a longer time. Mary drove in the opposite direction going 10 miles per hour faster than Paul for 4 hours. So it's telling us that Mary traveled for 4 hours. Sorry, I don't know what that noise was. So Mary traveled for 4 hours. Paul left 2 hours before Mary, so that means that Paul traveled for 4 plus 2, which is 6. And then we have to look at the rates. For this one, I would figure out which one which one they're solving for. So they may ask you about Paul, they may ask you about Mary, they may ask you about both, but just make sure that you know which one you're solving for. So we're looking for Paul's speed. We don't know how fast he's going, so I'm going to call that R. And it tells us that Mary was traveling 10 miles per hour faster than Paul. So we know that if we took Paul's speed, R, plus Mary's plus 10, that would give us Mary's speed. So the distance that Mary traveled is equal to 4 times r plus 10, which equals 4r plus 40. And Paul's distance is going to be 6 times r. So this one's a little bit more complex. It is going to be a little bit harder of a linear equation, not much, but a little bit harder of a linear equation to solve. So then we would take Mary's distance, the 4r plus 40, plus Paul's distance, which is 6r, and that gives us a total of 340. So now if we solve this problem, remember we start by adding like terms, so we would have 10r plus 40 is 340. We want to bring the 40 to the opposite side, so subtract the 40. And we have 10r equals 300. And if we solve, we end up with the rate is equal to 30. So if we go back to how we set it up, remember that that is Paul's, because Paul is rate. So Paul is 30, and you always want to look back at it to make sure that you have it in the right units. So for this one, we're using miles per hour. So Paul's speed is 30 miles per hour. And that's what they asked for. If they asked for Mary's speed, we could also find that. We could see that Mary's traveling at 40 miles per hour. That was not asked of us, but if you were asked for Mary's, you could easily find it. So always reread the question to make sure that you found what you were looking for. Don't answer too much. Don't answer too little. I know that sometimes when we have something like this, if they had asked for Mary's, we would have to plug it into this. So just be careful about rereading and making sure you solved for the exact thing that was asked for. As always, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know. If there are additional topics that you need me to cover, let me know that as well.